Hey, middle-aged musician here. I just thought I'd talk a little bit about theory light, some things that I show a lot of students, but fours and fives. Fours and fives are massively important. And when you play a lot of different instruments, you start thinking in terms of intervals. But the guitar is nice, and the bass even more so, because you're tuned in perfect fours. I say the bass even more so because you don't have this B string, which is tuned to a third. If you go to the mandolin, violin, you're tuned in fifths. But the fourths and fifths are opposite. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. They're complementary. I can't say opposite, but they're complementary. So what do I mean by they're tuned by force? So let's take the major scale and just play it, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. The next string would go to the A string. 1, 2, 3, 4. When we get to the G string, we're tuned to a third, right? 2, 3. Right, if we went to 4, tuned to a third. So you have to adjust for that. But outside of that, it's pretty easy to navigate. And when you're on the bass guitar, you're just 4 strings, maybe 5, but that's a lower string. It's not that. You don't get into that territory. And so it makes it pretty easy to figure out. So there's a lot of this fingerboard math that you learn at one point, and then once you understand where the notes are, you don't need to know it anymore. But there's a time and place where some of these relationships are important. The fingerboard geometry, right? So if we just take the major scale, and I'm going to keep this guitar up here. So if we're in G, there's our 1, there's our 3. So that's a 1 string over, 1 string down. If we want to go to our 4, that's a 1 string over, 1 string, same fret. So here's where it gets interesting. Let's just take the whole first octave of the major scale. So if you'll notice, I use my pinky a number of times. 1, 2, 3. I don't use my pinky. Don't use my pinky. 5. Don't use my pinky. Don't use my pinky. Octave. Use my pinky. Use my pinky on the 2, 5, and 1. So if we think about just going over 1 string, not changing frets, if we start with a root, we go from the 1 to the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 4. But when we were talking about our root, here, if we go back a string, that's our 5. So 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5. So at some point you probably have learned about power chords, which are 1s and 5s. In this case, G5 power chord. But we can play this. In this case, we're on the 3rd fret of our E, which is a G, and the 5th fret of our A, which is a D. Or we can play on the 5th fret of our A and D, which again is our D and now our G. It's an inversion, but right? Okay. So that's interesting, right? So we have this shape, 1 over, 2 up is our 5. Two up is our octave. One over this way is our 4. 1 and 4. This way is our 1 and 5. So if we're playing these two notes together, only playing those two notes, that's a G and a C. That's our 1 and 4 together, which is a kind of less complicated sus4 chord, right? Because you replace a 3 with a 4. Because normally our 3 is here. But at the same time, we have our C here. This is C5. Just inverted. So that's our first relationship we have here, is this just one string over. 1, 4. If the root is this way and the 4 is that way. If the root is that way, for example, E and A, if the root is on the E and we're fretted straight across E and A, that's the 4 chord, which is going to be a very simplified sus4 chord. If our root is on the A, we're going the other way, well, then that's a C. C5. Same chord. Right, same chord. So we've talked about the guitar being in fourths this way, but the corollary to that is going the opposite way. The guitar is tuned in fifths. Tuned in fourths this way, tuned in fifths the other way. And if you've played mandolin and guitar, you'll recognize this sort of relationship. And we can get way deeper in the math here, but what I want to focus on today are the 1s and the 4s, right? So 1, go that way, go higher in pitch. That's a 1-4 relationship. 1 here, go this way in pitch. That's a 5th relationship. 1, 4, 1, 5 from the scale. And I'm talking about major scale, but this is not going to matter much until you get into some of the modes. And only a couple of the modes do you see, Locrian, for example, where you see this might change. So let's talk about the other way. So this was our 1 to 4 relationship, and this was our 1 to 5 relationship. So 1 to 4 is just going up in pitch 1 string, and then up and on the same fret. Up in pitch 1 string, up 2 frets is a 1 to 5 relationship. So, and you'll see this a lot in punk music. Like a lot of times your 1, 4, 5 progressions, right? 1, 4, 5 relationships get inverted in a lot of punk music, because if you take that 1 here, then your 4 is here. Especially in kind of the 90s bubblegum punk era, that seemed to be like a huge thing. But anyway, it really is the mirror image. So if we take the 1-4 relationship, we've talked about this a little bit, right? If we go 3rd fret on the root here is a G. That C, that's the 4 in the G scale. If we take the C scale, go the other way, that's the 5 in the C scale. So if we take the G scale again, G, D is our 5. So 1 to 5 is this. Now let's take the root on our A string, so we're going to work backwards. We're going to work the other way. If We've already talked about if we just go one string over, that's our 5. Well, if we go one string over and 2 frets back, that's our 4. So we have the same shape, depending on your root, if you're playing a 1-4 or 1-5. 1-4 going that way. 5-1 going this way. Same shape. 1-4, 5-1. Now we'll go the other way. 1-5. Go this way. 1-4. So we've watched our 1s and 4s flip around. And there's lots of this weird kind of math. Like we can talk about going and up 5 frets and up 7 frets, depending which way you're going, because there's 12 notes in an octave to find the next, for example, if you're taking a G, 3rd fret, go up the next string, we're going to add 7. It's on the 10th fret. Right, there's lots of these sort of mathematical things you don't think about. And the guitar is nice because it's laid out in a way you don't have to think about it that much. But it is useful at a certain point to understand that there's this layout and it makes sense and it's not just arbitrary, which there are a lot of instruments where it seems arbitrary. Like you take the saxophone or something else, right? The guitar, and even more so 4 or 5 string bass, it's laid out in a way that makes sense. Violin, viola, a lot of these instruments, it makes sense the way it's laid out. You can take those same shapes, those same spatial relationships, right? I said like 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, and you just go, you move them around, right? So a G major scale, take the same exact shape, move it up to A, starting on an A note, C note, D note. Right, so you can move these things around because the way the instrument's laid out, and it's laid out in this sort of logical, for the most part, parallel geometry, and so it works to your advantage. So the more you can understand that and take advantage of it, the less work you have to do. Because for a lot of people, you just memorize stuff. You memorize stuff. I'm going to play this, and once you realize it, oh no, if I'm here and I add 7 frets, or I go the other way, add 5 frets, or I do this other thing, octaves, or 2 plus 2, right? Go over 2 strings and up 2 frets. There's my octave, right? Like that. Those sorts of things work to your advantage. So anyway, I hope this is helpful to people. I apologize about some of the background noise, but anyway, middle-aged musician, and I'm out for the day, but I will have some new content soon. So appreciate y'all. Thanks. Bye.